Blackhawks fans, welcome in. It is the Four Feathers podcast live after the Hawks' first victory of the season. 10 times a charm, gentlemen. I'm Jonnie, joined by Ron Luce, Tony Marchese. Boys, as I mentioned, first win of the season. How's it feel?
Insanity. Absolute insanity, Johnny. It's so refreshing to talk about a win after essentially what was maybe the worst month of Blackhawks hockey we've seen in a very long time. So it's nice to start out November on a high note with a win in what I think we can all safely agree was the Patrick Kane game.
Johnny, this was like the end of a drought. It was essentially what you would call a slump buster, right? This was the slump buster. It wasn't exactly. I mean, I guess you could say this was pretty, but for all intents and purposes, as Ron said, the worst stretch of Blackhawks hockey that we've probably all watched in our lifetime. And some of that's external factors, some of that's on-ice factors, the culmination of it. Rock bottom was hit, and I'm just hoping that this is kind of that trudge up from rock bottom. It's always great to talk about a win. We love victory beers on this show. We haven't even gotten to say the words victory beers on Four Feathers podcast since what feels like 6-7 months ago.
Early May.
Victory beers. I think I made an edit of victory beers for Four Feathers that we've never even fucking released yet.
Yeah.
Here we are tonight. We're having victory beers. Cheers, boys. Victory beers taste way better. And I like for 2 seconds, we get to watch the Blackhawks win a hockey game tonight, guys. Cheers. Let's break this down.
Yeah, a lot of more grand scheme of things. Topics to go over too, and obviously this is just one, and it's against a team that was also near the bottom of the league. But I like what Marc-Andre Fleury said, just kind of this relief that we're feeling right now. It wasn't lost on him either. They asked, is it good to get the monkey off the back? And he said, it's more like a gorilla. It's not like a small monkey. And I like that quote. That's kind of, I think what all Blackhawks fans were feeling. And then you had Patrick Kane too. Obviously you guys talked about the, excellent outing that he had tonight, 4 points, hat trick, passes Steve Larmer, third all-time Blackhawks goal list in franchise history there. So a lot of cool stuff going on with that tonight. Hagel has 2 goals, Taves 2 assists. You had performances from others that we'll talk about. Fleury stopped 29-30 tonight, following up a solid performance over the weekend in St. Louis. Guys, before we do and get into any of this, listeners, make sure you're visiting ontapsportsnet.com for all Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs. Give us a follow on social media at Four Feathers Pod and at OnTapSportsNet. Make sure you subscribe the OnTap Sportsnet YouTube page. That is where you can leave comments, interact with us live on these shows when we're recording them. So now that housekeeping's out of the way, guys, this win finally, and I know we want to get back and talk more about this, but this followed up a stretch of games, 3-2 overtime loss versus Toronto last Wednesday, Friday night, 6-3 loss at Carolina, 1-0 loss at St. Louis Saturday night. Felt like they were getting a little closer at the end there, just couldn't get over the hump. But obviously Patrick Kane's presence tonight was exactly what they needed to get over that hump.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have Patrick Kane in the lineup, it drastically improves your offense just by him stepping on the ice. And, pleasant surprise for the Blackhawks today with him returning at morning skate kind of out of the blue. And that's really how people first found out. I think I saw it first with our boy Charlie Remiliotis. He sent the video into the Twitter sphere and everybody was like, oh, he's back. And then, of course, JC's like, well, is he going to play? Well, he played. And you would never know the dude had 10 days off. He probably hasn't moved off his couch in 10 days. And he literally just came back, led the team in terms of forwards and ice time. And he just put up a goal or 3 goals and an assist and makes history. I mean, just what a banner night for Patrick Kane in terms of his performance, because he was absolutely just beyond good.
It only took 4 minutes, 41 seconds for me to get mad at Jeremy Carlton for a few things. Not knowing that Patrick Kane was going to be in the lineup tonight. Like, I think, Ron, you knew that. I think I knew that. I think everybody and their mother knew that Patrick Kane was going to be playing tonight the minute that he fucking took the ice and the morning skate today. I don't know if it's gamesmanship from Carlton. I don't know if it's there were other tests that Patrick Kane had to clear to come back. I thought that, the fact that he was on the ice meant that he was COVID negative and ready to go. I didn't understand the quote earlier, but I think that, like you said, Ron, I mean, dude just showed up tonight. He absolutely showed up tonight, and this is something that we've talked about on this show over the course of 3 years that we've been doing this. There's going to be nights where Patrick Kane comes out and does something absolutely special on the ice, and this is just another one of them. Guy has the ability to take over a game. You saw exactly that tonight. You saw him provide all the offense that you would have needed to win a hockey game, and did it with what seemed like ease. So, 10 days off, no rust to knock off. Just get out there and be Patrick Kane. And that's what you saw tonight. And obviously, in the grand scheme of things, very good for this Hawks team to break that streak. And also good to see Kane show up and look good.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to discuss regarding Patrick Kane. I'm sure it'll come up at some point later in the show because it's hard to talk about this game without talking about Patrick Kane. But you talk about other positive developments for the Blackhawks, and it's kind of a building thing. And that's Marc-Andre Fleury in net. I think I was concerned. I think a lot of Hawks fans were concerned at the beginning because, yes, sure, the defense wasn't playing stellar in front of him, but there were also situations that he put himself in with handling the puck poorly that would, lead to goals against, and then also just some maybe questionable ones. Maybe, you're like, that's not very Flower-like. He would normally save something like that in some prior games, kind of through that first 5 to 6 game stretch of the schedule. But either way, after maybe going to Lankinen back-to-back times, Fleury gets back in net and on Saturday night, and you're talking about a stellar performance. He played well at St. Louis. Just like, hey, name of the game, you got to be able to score one at least to win, and the Blackhawks couldn't even do that. So him building on that, similar stat lines in those, as I mentioned, stopped 29 to 30 tonight. I'd still imagine, with the way Colin's been doing shit, who knows? Maybe you'll ride a hot hand of sorts and go back to Fleury on Wednesday night against Carolina, but it could also very well be Kevin Lankinen in that net. So I don't know exactly what's going on there, who's going to be in Wednesday, but either way, it's a good sign for the Blackhawks that Marc-Andre Fleury is starting to look more like Marc-Andre Fleury. Thoughts there?
Yeah, it's refreshing that he looks like Marc-Andre Fleury. I think a lot of people were concerned early, just from the standpoint of, oh my goodness, like the Hawks took him on, and surely it was a move thinking about him as your number one goaltender. And if he's not able to perform and kind of, I guess, maybe push Lankinen in a way where he, fits that 1A role that I think even fans and the coaching staff envision him taking this season. I think that just allowed for concern because it's like, well, crap, now if Lankinen has to lead again and he's not totally ready, is this team even going to be able to win games when you need your goalie to steal one for you? And, like you said, Johnny, he played so well on Saturday night. It's unfortunate that he got the loss. And then tonight he follows it up with another great performance. He was challenged really hard early in that first period. I mean, I think they were outshot, 12-4 or even maybe worse at one point in the first period. He stood tall and stopped the pucks when he needed to, and only giving up one goal tonight was a perfect example of, him seeming like Marc-Andre Fleury of old. And now you got to at least feel a little more confident between the pipes because even Lankinen hasn't looked that atrocious in the last couple games. It feels like maybe the goalies just needed a little time to get warmed up, and it seems like now that November's rolling around, they might be at that point.
I'm not going to go and shine a light on all of this, but the fact that, you've had this Blackhawks team, if you take all of the off-ice factors away from it, you've got two really good goaltenders here. You've got Kevin Lankinen, who proved over stretches last year that he can hold the crease as a number one goaltender in the NHL. I think that, he's got a little bit of development to do, but you've also got Marc-Andre Fleury. These are guys that you kind of expect to steal games. You saw Kevin Lankinen steal games for this Blackhawks team last year. You saw Marc-Andre Fleury, if you've watched hockey over the last, 10 fucking years, steal hockey games for you. You've seen some of the Marc-Andre Fleury-ness so far. Unfortunately, the Hawks haven't been able to capitalize and put the puck in the back of the net. I think, for as much as that we want to talk about the goaltending here, I think some of the other factors here come at the other end of the ice. Guys, to be honest with you, I think that the Blackhawks have a chance to win every single game, no matter who is starting in net. That's just my personal opinion. whether it be Marc-Andre Fleury, who I think gives you a little bit better of a chance to win a hockey game, or Kevin Lankinen. I don't think that the problem's really been in the net guys. I think it's been in other areas of the ice. I think it's been in their own zone, not so much them, but for all intents and purposes, outside of Corey Crawford and Robin Lehner, and maybe the Scott Darling Corey Crawford tandem, and you could throw Ray Emery Corey Crawford in there as well. This is a stand up, one of the best goaltending tandems that we've seen in a long time. And that's giving a lot of credit to Kevin Lankinen. I'm really high on this kid. I might end up eating my words at some point here, but I'm really high on Kevin Lankinen. I think that he is the guy eventually that's going to be your number one goaltender in Chicago for a couple of years in a row. And you're going to have a guy behind him. Marc-Andre Fleury, credit to the Blackhawks organization for going out and getting this guy for basically nothing. I had some questions about whether or not he's committed to play here. But tonight went a long way, I think, at least for me, in showing that, he is committed. He does want to play hockey. He does want to be here. And I think his statements after that loss to the Blues, where he's, this is embarrassing, nobody wants to be here, kind of showed that, he is serious about this. And I think that, the goaltending isn't the problem that we have here. It hasn't been the problem so far this year. But tonight, just classic. Marc-Andre Fleury, and you love to see that. One thing I want to comment on, Ron, you and I had an exchange earlier this morning during the morning skate. Does Jeremy Colleton know how to use the starter's net during the morning skate? I'll go to you guys.
I guess not. And you and I were reflecting on that as I was writing up that article today that everybody can go check out over at ontapsportsnet.com. But I mean, it's goofy because it's like that. You see the tweets come out from all the insiders and reporters that are at the United Center that, okay, Lankinen's working in the starters net. So everybody's like, okay, maybe they're saving Marc-Andre Fleury for Wednesday because it's Carolina and Carolina is clearly the better team and this, that, and the other, and then not 4 minutes afterwards, 30 seconds before I'm ready to publish that article. Oh, hey, Marc-Andre Fleury's starting in that tonight. What the hell? And then it's like, yeah, because he left the ice first. And I don't think he knows
how to use Colleton trying to punish people like us and the beat writers by doing that? Is he
strictly trying to fuck with the media?
Is he a master troll? Is Jeremy Colleton a master troll at this point in time?
Because he did utilize it correctly last year, if I'm not mistaken.
He did. And all of a sudden, this has completely changed.
Yeah. So maybe it is a bit of trolling. It is a fair amount of trolling, I guess.
I don't know.
That might be where it's at when you're talking about
leaving it up to discussion. I think Jeremy Colleton has a Twitter account. Yeah. I think he goes back at the end of practice and he just scrolls through and he looks at all of us and says, "Ha ha." Yeah, that might be his form of entertainment.
Yeah, very, very well could be, Tony. I think that's a good point because that's not the first time either. That was just the most recent example this morning. But there was I think it was last week when they were home still. There was another situation that was basically the same thing. Whoever was going to start was not in the starter's crease. I used finger quotes there. But then it ended up being, the guy that wasn't in that starter's crease ended up getting the net. So could be, element of gamesmanship, like you said there, Tony, but more just for some, throw off the people closest that are right there around the team. So we'll leave it at that for there. You talked about, Tony, another problem there. This kind of all started with the goaltender talk. I just wanted to get that out of the way because Marc-Andre Fleury riding a couple games back to back now. So, we got to take what we can positive from this team at any point that we can get it. But another reason, we talked about Patrick Kane coming out of the COVID protocol. Another reason that you talked about struggles here, a lot of it up front, not being able to score enough, not being able to keep up with other teams. Well, Jujar Kara, Henrik Borgstrom, Riley Stillman still in COVID protocol despite Patrick Kane exiting that today, and Tyler Johnson missed a second straight game today with neck soreness. So that's kind of the injury updates there. It's interesting, guys. We were talking about a guy like Reese Johnson here, on this before. It's like this is not a guy you really expected to get in until maybe later in the season when injuries wore down further and maybe piled up. And I know that COVID can bring that about a lot quicker, but still, it's just not your best offensive options there. It's just kind of we missing any absences here. It's causing, things like going nuclear in that second period with Taves and Kane playing together. It's interesting because you have to do that to beat the Ottawa Senators. Doesn't really inspire confidence. And I just want to see Henrik Borgstrom back out there because that guy has potential. And I think as soon as he gets going, it could be piling in a bunch in a row. So that's just my take on it. Thoughts on offense, what they can do to improve overall. Obviously, outburst for 5 tonight is nice, but can they sustain that, and how can they do that?
I'll take this one, Ron, real quick. I think that you bring up a couple names. Henrik Borgstrom is one of them that's really going to help this offense. I think it's almost unreasonable at this point in time for a Hawks fan to sit here, look at this team and be like, yeah, they can, because Patrick Kane. And for as much as that we give credit to Patrick Kane or Jonathan Taves or Alex DeBrincat, and you look at some of the secondary scoring that comes from guys like Dominic Kubalik, it's really easy to be on one night and off the next, right, guys? Like that's hockey for you. So you're going to see these offensive outbursts from this team on nights where you get some, really good performances out of Alex DeBrincat or Patrick Kane or Jonathan Taves, especially those guys that are up front. We've talked about this over and over again. Those are the types of guys that are going to win you a bunch of games. Some of the scoring is going to have to come from your third and fourth line. You're going to have to get Ryan Carpenter going. You're going to have to get guys that just don't generally show up on the score sheet rolling with each other in order to provide that offense. You do have a way better defensive core than you've had in a long time. We were just talking about this before we got on the mic. Connor Murphy, Seth Jones, some of these guys that you've got in this defensive core that are reliable guys. You've got good goaltending. I think some of this just comes down to how do you roll through 4 lines? Really, how do you get to a point? And some of those answers may be a guy like Borgstrom coming back to the lineup and providing some of that extra speed that you just don't see right now. You saw from Patrick Kane and just how much different this offense looked tonight when you've got a guy that can skate, who's a sniper, who's a puck handler, who can skate with speed versus some of the slowed down stuff. I hammered home before the season started, after we watched some of the preseason stuff, how I like this team's fight. That's all fine and dandy, but it needs to be supplemented with something like Patrick Kane, like Henrik Borgstrom. Those are the type of guys that are going to drive the offense. So yeah, they are missing that right now. I'll leave it on this. I got a text message from somebody else who watches the Hawks all the time, and he said, "Hey, you're looking at this record right now. Are you worried? What's going on? What's wrong with this team?" I said, critical underperformance and so many factors around this. You look at off-ice situation, you look at on-ice situation, COVID running through the locker room, all this other stuff. This team has not lived up to expectations. I don't even think they lived up to expectations tonight. It's a good hockey team. They've just underperformed. They've had some of the most crazy external factors that you've had to look at. You've got stud goaltending in net. There's no reason they can't turn it around, but there's really no reason also at the same time to believe that they will. So it's just a really interesting spot to be in.
Crossroads.
Yeah, it really is. And kind of supplement that, because I agree. I think guys, as they get healthy, obviously that's a big part of it, but guys like the Henrik Borgstroms of the world, the Tyler Johnsons of the world, those guys that are going to be in, more depth scoring roles need to be able to get going. A guy I'd like to see get going, if they're not going to trade him, is Dylan Strome as well. I think he's a good name to throw in there also. Yep. But something I want to see a little more of that I think is truly going to help this offense, and maybe not necessarily in the terms of goals, but definitely in the terms of these guys setting up potential chances, especially for some of these grinders that they've assembled on this roster that can play in front of the net. Ryan Carpenter, Mackenzie Entwistle, so on and so forth. I want to see more shots out of the defense, because tonight, despite 31 shots on goal, they only had 4 shots on goal from their blue line, and it was between 2 guys. Seth Jones had 2, Eric Gustafson had the other 2. I want to see guys like Jake McCabe, who has an absolute rocket of a shot.
Shoot preseason.
Yeah. The same thing with guys like Connor Murphy, because sure, and even, guys like maybe Stillman and Jones when they get back, or Wyatt Kalynuk, I think, is a guy that would shoot the puck more than
I just want Riley Stillman to murder somebody. That's all. Just line them up on the boards, provide me that energy, start a fight.
Exactly.
Get
And
out.
even that, and even guys like Calvin DeHaan, who, we're obviously big fans of, but I'd love to see these guys shoot more because, again, even if it's not necessarily the goals coming necessarily from the blue line, if you can generate a rebound scoring opportunity, or you can generate a shot even toward the net, maybe it doesn't count as a shot on goal, but it goes behind the net, and one of those big guys like a Strome or a Borgstrom or something can muscle it in from behind the net, make a nice pass out in front into the slot, like that's just going to generate more offense. When you only get 4 shots on goal out of only 2 defensemen out of 31 total shots tonight, that's something I want to see raise a little bit. I'm not saying they need to have 10 shots a goal on game, but 6 would be nice, maybe even 7 and 8 on a really high scoring night.
Ron, I think that's a way to help reward some of those depth forwards who may not be as skilled at bringing the puck in or skating through, 5 different guys on the defense. You can reward them for positioning if they're in the right spot. I mean, hey, it didn't go off of him, but it very well could have tonight. A guy like Ryan Carpenter right out in front of the net. Granted, that was Brandon Hagel throwing the shot, but either way, very well could have been from a defenseman who stepped up into that just above the circle spot where Hagel ended up firing it from. So I think that's a good way to put it there. And then also, you don't have to be as cute. You don't have to be as, we need to dig out every single minuscule like puck battle and hope that it stays in and our guys keep it there at the top. Because then once it gets back there and you get your positioning in front of the net, then that's when a big shot from the D can come through, and that can bank off a skate. It can bank off of a stick. It can go off a defender in. Hey, you never underestimate defensemen screening their own goalies, because it very well can happen as long as your forwards are in the right place there and forcing them to be in those spots. So I agree with you, Ron. And hey, Seth Jones, that's what you're here for, buddy. Bring it. I know you said he had 2 of them tonight, but even more. There was one, I believe, in the first period. He passed up grade A chance. I mean, shit. And he tried to just shovel it over to Patrick Kane, who was way too close to him. If he had a little more spacing and Kane was in like the middle of the slot, I could have seen that's okay. And if he's open, okay, that's fine. You're getting it to an elite scorer. But Jones had the angle and he had the lane, and he going for Kane there. So you're going on. I didn't mean to steal your point, but that's just where I wanted to go with that. And just other ways to generate offense. So then when you are missing some of your skill guys, you don't have to be as cutesy with the puck,
Exactly. And I literally had that written down on my notes tonight, Johnny, was Jones needs to shoot, because that play was the exact one that stood out to me too. I'm like, why are you passing there? That's trying to be cute and making one too many passes. Just take the shot, dude. You have a good shot. I mean, the guy has scored plenty of goals in his career. Yeah, he leads the Hawks in assists, and that's great. I love the fact that he has 7 assists. Now I think he got his 8th tonight. So 8 assists through 10 games for this team. But dude, shoot. You have the shot. Use it.
This is going to sound real neatbally. Shoot and hit people. No hits tonight for Seth Jones. Hit people. Use the body. You have that size. Johnny, you've said this a million fucking times. You cannot teach size.
Yeah.
Be a force out there. That's what I want to see from Seth Jones.
Back to just a very small moment in the game that they lost at New Jersey. Was that like the 3rd game of the year? It might have been the 2nd game of the year, was it? Yeah. And Seth, it was like just a situation of, beating a guy to a puck. And guess what? He had the inside position. So boom, uses that big shoulder, upends the guy and retrieves the puck. It's not like going out of your way to go and destroy someone. I think that's what you're getting at there, Tony. It's like, use the frame. You can't teach size. Use the big butt. Use the shoulders. Use it all, man.
Yeah.
Marian Hossa was great at that.
No, you've got that build. Go and do it. You've seen Zdeno Chara do it. You've seen Marian Hossa do it. You've seen plenty of guys do it. Anze Kopitar. It doesn't matter what your position is. It's just a matter of size. You've got a longer reach than the guy who's next to you. You've got a bigger body. They're intimidated by you. I can assure you that when Seth Jones winds up and takes a slap shot, it's more intimidating than when Alex DeBrincat does. I can assure you that when you're going into the corner, I would rather see Alex DeBrincat next to me than Seth Jones. Use that to your advantage. And I think that, that's just something that the Hawks can build off of. And especially if you're Seth Jones, you can use that to your advantage to help the Blackhawks win. You look at this up and down, and it's great that you've got assists. But, guys, if I'm really looking at that, like assists for Seth Jones are good. I'm not going to say that they're bad. But if Seth Jones has 1 assist in a game and no hits and 2 shots on net, I would rather see Seth Jones pepper 6 pucks to the net and hit 4 people. in this game. And in this game,
I think that's fair.
that's
Well,
just, I feel like that's where his game should be,
sure.
at least in my opinion.
Well, and you look at it too, right? Like they went out of their way this offseason to establish size on the blue line. Obviously, they're missing one of their guys in Riley Stillman. That kind of brings that aspect. But look at the other two guys they went and got, and then the guy that they extended to make sure he wasn't leaving anytime soon, and Connor Murphy and Jake McCabe. All three of them, including Seth Jones, have size, and Murphy and McCabe know how to use it. 3 and 2 hits respectively for those guys tonight. Even DeHaan and Gustafson each had 3 hits tonight on the blue line. The only other defenseman that didn't have a hit tonight was Phillips. And, in fairness to Phillips, he only played like 12 minutes tonight. That's the classic, Jeremy Colleton playing a super young dude as the sixth dude.
We're hammering down on Johnny's guy, Seth Jones, like the number one fucking target here in a 5-1 win. The first time the Hawks win, we're hammering down on Seth Jones. That's how important I think that he really is to this Hawks team going forward.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to say this, and I'm going to agree with Johnny. That's how important he is. When there's no hits there, and you are basically, you're paid as the number one defender here. You are absolutely paid. Nobody can fucking argue that you are paid as the number one defender. And Eric Gustafson is out hitting you out there, and that's not lack of opportunity for Seth Jones to lay a hit on somebody. That to me says, at least, and the people on Twitter are doing this whole red flag thing. Seth Jones had no hits. Throw the red flags out there.
So I kind of want to establish something, Tony, because I think that there isn't like a minimum like quota that he has to like have every
I'll give him a quota. I'll give him a quota.
Well, I think what it is, at least for me, it's that you're paid to do so you should dominate the blue line. And I want to see it night in and night out while your legs are still good for it. I think that's my biggest kind of urge, sort of, like urgency behind wanting Seth Jones to do more and do more of everything on the back end. That's putting shots on, hitting people, taking the puck away, and scoring goals too. Let's see some of that too. Fuck, he had plenty of them in his prior years with Nashville and with Columbus. He could score a goal here too. That'd be nice.
I wouldn't complain.
Yeah. Nor would I, not only for sake of helping the Hawks, but he's also on my fantasy team. But I mean, especially guys too, when like you make so many good points about him being the number one defenseman, right? Obviously, he's clearly paid astronomically more than everybody else on the roster. After next season, or after this season, he will be what, $5.1 million greater than Connor Murphy, who's 4.4, which will be the next highest once DeHaan's 4.55 drops off. I know I'm a numbers nerd. That's just what I do here. But like, that's a sizable difference. Like that clearly defines who's the number one. This isn't a team like what it was for the Hawks, even in the Cup years where Seabrook's making 5.7 at the time, Keith's making 5.5, and even Jalmerson was making 4.1. Like they're a little closer together. Obviously, Keith was the number one guy, but like they were all a little closer together. So it was like, okay, hey, they're all playing really well. They're all, meeting their marks. Seth Jones, and then Tony, to your point, you'll be the third largest contract on the team next year. Fuck being on the blue line. You're the third largest on the team as a prime age defenseman. I mean, he's just turned 27. So as a prime age defenseman in the NHL, be the player that you've been the last couple of years and start to improve it in your prime, right? Like Patrick Kane was a superstar before he hit his prime, but then we saw MVP trophies when Patrick Kane hit his prime. Like, I think Seth Jones is getting to that point in his career where he should do that because he's that talented. Now we want to see it. He also, you mentioned giveaways or giveaways and takeaways for him. Like he's a takeaway machine. Like he has done that historically in his career. No takeaways tonight, 2 giveaways. Like yes, it's a 5-1 win and that's great. But Tony, I agree with you. Like you got to show up like the number one guy night in, night out. And sure, sometimes the big contract extension gets to guys. The new change of scenery for him is maybe something to, revolving deep pairings. I know they've tried a couple different guys with him, even though him and DeHaan have probably been together the most. Like, I'm hoping now that we're 10 games into the season that he really starts to ramp up here. Otherwise, like it's going to generate concern amongst people, especially looking forward, Johnny, like you've said, because if he's not going to live up to the contract, that's a huge burden, especially when the cap's not going to rise for probably at least 2 to 3 years. To have on your roster at that number that he's at.
Yeah, no, for sure. Guys, while we're on the topic of the back end here, you mentioned in passing there, Isaac Phillips, a guy, and yes, he's brought up being the sixth guy that plays like the limited minutes here. But how much are we missing Wyatt Kalynuk and Caleb Jones right now? Because either one of them, and this is no offense to Isaac Phillips or Ian Mitchell or those guys that were there. We said that defensemen take forever to develop, and we know that, but those guys proved capable in their respective, Caleb Jones being with the Oilers and Wyatt Kalynuk playing at the end of last season with the Blackhawks, and obviously on track before that injury during training camp here. How much are they missing these guys? Is this a big factor in some of these losses that we're having? I know, a little bit closer and obviously a winded night in their last two, but before that, I feel like a lot of the depth there, it's like any team looking at it, whenever they can get that matchup out there, you can just go and attack and feel like you have free reign around the net. Any thoughts there on the back end of the blue line?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that the Blackhawks went out and addressed this offseason was, yeah, we're going to go beef up the top of our, guys. Like go get Jake McCabe. They go make the big trade for Seth Jones. But at the same time, they made the nice little moves, making sure they had Wyatt Kalynuk. They got Stillman at the deadline last year in that trade with Borgrum and Connolly, who's now down in Rockford as organizational depth. But they also went and got Caleb Jones, and that was to make sure that they had three guys that could effectively rotate as that fifth and sixth D man on the roster outside of your DeHaan, McCabe, Murphy, and Jones. And that was Baby Jones and Kalynuk joined by Stillman. All three of them are hurt right now. And I absolutely think they are missing those guys because Stillman, as Tony said, brings that physical presence. You're playing a heavier team. You can have him in the lineup one night. You're playing a little more of a faster skilled team. You can ensure Kalynuk's going to be in the lineup because of his offensive ability. And then Jones is kind of that well-rounded guy. And we saw it in the preseason. I got to see him live in that home opening preseason game against the Blues. He looked great in that game. I actually left the United Center feeling excited about Caleb Jones this season. Again, yes, he's not going to be a top four guy, but hell, Caleb Jones is a really solid 5'6", made me excited about this team this year. And then, of course, both of them get hurt right before the season, and now Stillman's out with COVID. Jonnie, I absolutely think that's an underlooked part of the defense because, you can only lean on your big four so much until they start to get worn down. You need that defensive depth because otherwise, your guys that are talented aren't as effective because they're tired because they get burned out.
Here's some big picture stuff. And yes, I think you do miss Caleb Jones. I think you miss Kalynuk. But you also miss guys like Jokiharju. You miss guys like Boquist. You miss guys that were drafted in the first round. You talk about how long it takes these guys to develop. And you've got an organization, and I think that this goes deeper. This isn't just this game or wherever this goes, but it's systematic, right? And I think that there's a whole thing that we can dissect here with the moves that were made by the front office and Stan Bowman that have now hindered them somewhat, so to speak, where, hey, you want that offensive defenseman that develops a little quicker than your defensive defenseman that can slot into your 5'6" instead of having to go out and acquire some of these guys. What does a guy like Jokiharju do in developing in this system? What does Adam Boquist provide for you? And now I know that you I'm looking at this roster right now and I'm saying yeah, you got to give something up to get something, right? That's just the name of the game. But some of the guys that you've traded away were also the missing pieces now that you have on the back end here. And at least that's how I feel, is that you've kind of decimated some of those missing pieces to go grab bigger pieces that you had a huge problem with. But now we're trying to fill in those gaps. And you're like, okay, like Caleb Jones, right? And then you go and look at what the development is going to be for some of these other guys over the course of 4 or 5 years. And you're just trying to plug holes. And that's all they've been doing now for quite a bit of time, is just trying to plug holes. And so I think that that's the larger issue here, is that you've kind of decimated some of those guys who could develop into top tier pieces, first round talent, second round talent that can develop into some of those pieces that are, staples 5'6" guys on the defensive end. And you're going back and you're reacquiring Eric Gustafsson.
Yeah.
That's your problem, right?
Time is a flat circle.
And just
exactly. That's what it is. You go out there and you go draft this guy to be a better Eric Gustafson, and now we're sitting here and you've got fucking Eric Gustafson back. Like, there's your problem with some of this.
In addition to Tony, like you mentioned, obviously you got to give up something to get something. You know, they parted with Boqvist in order to acquire Seth Jones, but like
there's a reason people wanted him,
right? But like there's also the trades that have been made in the past that you've noted for sure. Maybe Jokiharju as a first round pick wasn't going to be a top 2 defenseman in the league, but right now he would look really nice as a 5 or 6 on this Blackhawks team. And you traded him for a guy that's currently playing down in Rockford and can't get his shit together as a former 8th overall pick.
Ron, I'm looking at that when you sit there and Johnny asks a question, like, do they miss Caleb Jones and Kellynuck? And I'm sitting there going like, no, you missed Henry Jokiharju. Because he slots in at number 6, and I don't think any of us are having a complaint about that. I legitimately don't. Would you rather have him in the lineup than Gustafson right now? Would you rather have him in the lineup than maybe a Riley Stillman slotting in at 6 with this current night? Maybe that's debatable, but somebody gets to sit in the press box and drink beers. Pick and choose on who you're playing your matchups with. I think that's fair, Ron. You just bring it up right there, and it's like those are some of the missing pieces, and it's kind of still too fresh to go back there and be like Bowman, but it is Bowman. That was still the problem. We're still dealing with it. He's gone now, but you're still dealing with that.
Yeah,
there's a lot of work to be done to go undo some of those things.
Yeah, no, for sure. We kind of got a little bit, further organizational depth sort of talk there. But yeah, no, it's all fair points there, Tony. I'm just, fortunately, those 2 guys that would have plugged that, because guess what? If just Jones is injured, then Kellynuck's one that steps in. If just Kellynuck's injured, then it's Jones that's there. And then, of course, they're both out at the same time on the IR sort of thing. So that just kind of sucks where they're at right now. I feel like it'll look at least a little more stable when one of them at least returns. So, and then you got Stillman too, because you're talking about COVID absences, like I had mentioned earlier. Obviously, we mentioned the guys up front and the Borgstroms of the world, but then Stillman on the back end too there. So, hopefully at some point here, because with Patrick Kane was out since last Monday, I believe, and now he's back, or excuse me, it was last Saturday. Some of those guys were added earlier in the week there, so their kind of 10 days should be coming up here as long as they're testing negative. Hopefully we can get some of those back, at least from a Riley Stillman standpoint. And then the IR should, still going to be a little bit longer for those other guys that I mentioned, but finally working their way towards that, some better health overall on this sheet. So, guys, we're looking ahead. What's going on next here with the Blackhawks? They got Carolina at home Wednesday night, at Winnipeg Friday, and then home against Nashville on Sunday with their first win under their belt. They get any sort of streak, confidence, something going here?
I think you certainly hope so. I mean, Wednesday is going to be a tough test against a really good Carolina Hurricanes team that has just come flying out of the gate so far this season. But Winnipeg certainly is a beatable team. I'm not going to sit here and be like, the Hawks should win this game. Winnipeg is still a very good team. I think a lot of people are actually overlooking the Jets this year. But, you look at Winnipeg on the road. You look at, coming home then on Sunday for a team like Nashville, who, kind of is going through a little bit of an identity crisis. They need some scoring, and, they have some holes too. So I really think overall this is hey, let's try and make something out of this now. Let's take advantage, especially against some pretty decent teams. If they can truly step up and play well against teams like the Jets, and again, the Predators are always a tough out, and the Hurricanes in these next 3 games, I think that just helps them confidence, give them confidence as a roster again to say, hey, we are a good team. Look at us on paper. People expected us to make the playoffs. They start to play like it, and then they can put that momentum together. Maybe all of a sudden now we're sitting here at American Thanksgiving, which is kind of like what people deem the unofficial cutoff if you think a team's going to make playoffs or not, more often than not. Maybe at least we're talking about this team like they're there. They're in the hunt. Sure, maybe they're not firmly in the playoff picture because of how awful their start was, but at least if they're starting to write the momentum going into the American holiday, you feel at least a little better than as this season starts to trudge on.
Couple of thoughts here, Ron. Number one, I like that you prefaced American Thanksgiving for the Canadian listeners out there. I thought that was admirable. Number two, this team has the shortest leash that I've ever given a team, at least a Blackhawks team, in probably 10, 11 years here. They have no confidence from me until they can string together 2 or 3 wins. It's just or at least go 2 and 3 over a 3-game stretch. Tonight was great. Hopefully you go back out there and you win one of the next 2 games, and we can then talk about me having some confidence in this team. But the last thing I want to get to here is the fact that, this was the first fucking win all year overall. When I talk about stretches and everything, this was the first win, and it was largely held on Patrick Kane having a standout performance. And this is something
it was against the Senators.
It was against the Senators. This isn't, oh my God, the Hawks came out and won 5-1. This was an expected win on the schedule when you looked at it back in August. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's great to get off the schneid, but you got to do a lot more fucking work in order to earn any confidence. And anybody who's watched hockey in a long time, and I'm not gonna beat that anymore, go prove it on the ice.
Yeah.
That's all I've got to say.
Right, Tony, I'm right there with you, because I had to throw out the question as we're looking ahead for our What's on Tap next segment of this podcast episode. But I'm in that full same boat with you, and I feel like you're going to be right back in the L column on Wednesday night against the Carolina Hurricanes. A, they're off to a hot as hell start. B, they're very talented. C, you just played them on Friday night, and look what happened. A 6-3 loss, absolute track meet to start out. You kept up for a little bit. You scored the first one, then you got the game tied up, went ahead again, and then they just kind of took it to you until Alex DeBrincat added kind of a garbage. It was a cool goal, but it was kind of garbage time there. You're already down, was it 6-2 or 5-2 at that point. So it's going to be more of that.
I call those the Chell goals that make you not quit early.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was, because it was a highlight reel goal with the way that he weaved. But, in the grand scheme of things for the Hawks, garbage time. But just looking at that overall there, Patrick Kane, I know he played the most minutes among forwards tonight, but him, Jonathan Toews, I imagine they're going to be stacked up, being, kind of the nuclear option again, maybe Brandon Hagel or Kirby Doc alongside him, depending on what you want to match up with there. And then Seth Jones, Connor Murphy, Calvin DeHaan, those guys are going to have to be ready to play shit ton of minutes too, because you're probably not going to want to trust Isaac Phillips up there for too much on Wednesday night. So I think even when you throw your best at him like that, still ends up in a loss, probably a 2-goal loss at least. Thoughts?
You mentioned Isaac Phillips just really quickly. I'm kind of hoping and praying that a guy like Riley Stillman is out of COVID protocol by Wednesday. I think if he's reinserted, especially against a very fast and not, they have some size, but not egregiously large Carolina team, maybe that physical presence in the lineup can help the Hawks slow the game down a little more. And you noted the track meet the last time they played. Maybe that's not as bad in this case, and the Hawks are actually able to hang around and maybe steal a win against, again, probably, arguably the best team, in the first month of the season, and they're undefeated in the month of October. So, just little things like that right now you're looking for too, maybe as a way to, at least have a chance in the game on Wednesday.
I look at this and I say, I wish Patrick Kane didn't have a hat trick tonight. I wish he just scored a goal and scored the hat trick against Carolina, because you kind of look at things here and it's like, okay, this was, obviously the Hawks needed this one, but did you need all that kind of offensive production? And obviously easy for a great player like Patrick Kane to go do this tonight, but you would rather him show up in a game against Carolina and kind of save some of that. And I know that's all, you can't quantify that on the stat sheet, but overall you really want your best players to show up against the best teams. And it's really hard to go and repeat these types of performances. I think just over the history of sports, we've kind of culminated to the fact that, like, you're not going to score a hat trick every game. So if you're going to have some, I'd rather you have it against good teams than bad teams, but good players show up against them regardless. It is what it is. But that's kind of where I'm looking at this in a selfish manner and saying, like, as a fan, like, save some for tomorrow, I know it doesn't work that way, but I want to just fucking say, like, save some for tomorrow. Like, it doesn't matter if you fucking scored 3 or 10 goals against the Ottawa Senators. We're going to need you down the line to Ron, to your point. Like, we're coming up on Thanksgiving. We're in November now. This isn't October anymore. We've gotten through the first month of the season. You're going to have to take those steps to get there. And right now it kind of looks like, we talked about the defense. We talked about the goaltending. The goaltending's there. You're going to need the offense. Where's it coming from? Patrick Kane's the guy I'm looking at right away. When I say the words Blackhawks offense, if the first person that doesn't show up in your mind, if that's not Patrick Kane, I don't know who it is. Dominic Kubalik's a close second because I love him fucking cranking it. But outside of that, like DeBrinket's there. So if you're going to win this game, you need one of these guys, whether it's Dominic Kubalik, Patrick Kane, or Alex DeBrinket, because I'm not putting Jonathan Taves on this pedestal right now. I'm just not. You need one of those three guys to show up and have the same type of game that Patrick Kane had tonight where they're just fucking on. You need somebody to carry this shit. It's going to be really hard to win this game. The only thing that I have when you're talking about looking ahead is once the Nashville Predators get past their identity crisis, I want to know, will there be a banner raised? Past the identity crisis. That's where I'm at right now. That's what I want to know. I want to see that banner hung in Nashville. We got through our identity crisis. That's really bothering me.
I think there was something fucking hilarious.
What song are they playing during the ceremony? You're the DJ, Johnny.
Dude, I just wanted to point out, just since you brought that up, is that they finally made a joke about themselves with the banner, but it felt like it was 2 years too late. They were way past the thing. It was from their Twitter account just fairly recently, I believe.
That's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah. So that's just weird. And it's B, it's you don't even get credit for laughing at yourself then, because it was just way too late. I think that's the end all be all. And they're
someone from St. Louis or Chicago was hired as the new Predators social media guy. And has had that in the repertoire and probably pitched that as part of his interview. And it was I'm going to drop this tweet and we're going to bring that together. And some exec at the Panthers was it's a great idea. We're at the Predators. That's a great idea. We're going to go full in and we're just going to acknowledge the fact that this is fucking lame. That's the only explanation there. And it just went over a ton of bricks.
All right. Well, I'll be in the building. I'll make sure to give the Mustard Tigers some hell on
the Mustard Tigers. I love it.
So yeah, we're bringing that back. We're bringing back the Trailer Park Boys video. So you can't wait. It'll be good times. But one last thing, as you're talking about Patrick Kane and being, the offense, the first thing that comes to mind when you talk Blackhawks offense here. A couple things that I just noticed beyond obviously the goals that he scored and playing with speed, getting through the ice, all that on ice stuff. The celebrations that he had. He was fired up. A, you could tell he was happy to be back in the lineup. And then B, he was excited to help the Blackhawks propel to a win. He was thankful for the fans that were there, even though it was, obviously we're not selling out anymore. And it was, 15K, probably less than that. That was just 15K as in sold, a little bit over that. But he was thankful for the fans for showing up, and he said there was good energy in the building tonight. So obviously when you're scoring goals, you're helping provide that because people are getting excited, cheering for goals. And then also the urgency here with Patrick Kane wanting to get back and help this team. Said he texted Colin last night, begging to play tonight, despite being off the ice for 10 straight days, and even said, I'll only play 11 or 12 minutes if it meant just being in the lineup. And Colin joked and said, that's going to happen. So just stuff like that. Hearing that was via Charlie Romiliotis, that last story there. But just to your point, Tony, Patrick Kane wants to will this team to some victories here. He's going to need some supporting cast to help him out because it's not going to be a hat trick every night. I just kind of want to circle back, make that huge roundabout point there. But just my thoughts on Patrick Kane's kind of reaction and sort of antics in tonight's game and preceding it.
I'll round about that one more time, and that's the last things I'm going to say on the show. Is I talked about Jeremy Colleton being a troll. Again, you get in the post game, Patrick Kane texting Jeremy Colleton last night about playing, and then earlier today, we saw Jeremy Colleton say, I don't know if he's going to be in the lineup. I think Jeremy Colleton has a wonderful sense of humor, and I don't think that I've pointed this out at all. I think him and I would get along because it would just be a, just total shit show of just lying to people back and forth for the fact of this is what's actually going to happen, but I'm going to lead you down this path to believe that I have no fucking clue what's going on. I think Jeremy Colleton knows what's going on with this team. I just don't think that he relates enough or has enough strategy to get things done the right way. I think his sense of humor is fucking fantastic. He loves to fuck with people. He loves to, throw Kevin Lankinen in the starter's net and then pull Marc-Andre Fleury off the ice first. I find that hilarious. I think that that's awesome. I think that he can grow with that. I just wish that the team would maybe perform a little bit better and look a little bit better, and that maybe he would carry some of that into some. And this is weird because I can see Ron, who was out on Jeremy Colleton like a week ago,
dude.
Some of the things
I have never seen you give this much love to Jeremy Colleton.
Some of the things that he's done is expert level trolling. It is expert level trolling. I don't know if Patrick Kane's going to be in line. He's got some tests to pass. What does that mean? I have no fucking idea. I'm sitting there looking at NHL protocols for okay, he passed the COVID test. What the fuck is this guy doing? It's ultimate gamesmanship. It's trolling to a whole new degree that you don't see anywhere else. And I love that. And I almost want the guy to win now.
Yes.
It's become to a point where it's I want him to win.
What I wanted to bring this back to, Tony, is they're not allowed to have fun yet because of how terrible it's been on the ice.
Correct.
But if they get that and turn the corner and get to that and start stacking wins, and you go on a winning streak, that's opposite of that. Now, maybe not fucking 9 games, but still, say you string together 5, that'd be cool. I think you could see some of that, and that would be a cool time to break it out and be okay, these guys are actually enjoying their life. Because what was it Marc-Andre Fleury said it was hard to smile the other night. So yeah,
that's the mixed messages stuff, right? We've all been there. We've all been in a mixed messages situation. It's here's Jeremy Colleton trying to have some fun with the media and just with practice and everything, and that's a great fucking attitude. I love it. I think that can play really well in today's NHL. You have no idea what I'm doing if you're the opposing team or even the beat writer. Let's have a challenge here. But you've got to have success with that. You can't come out there and then all of a sudden hand your board to Alex DeBrincat and say, drop the power play, and have no fucking reason as to why, and say, I don't have all the best ideas. But if you go and you play that game with the media and with your opposing team in your morning skate, and then you come out there and you hand the board to Alex DeBrincat later on and come up with something witty to say in the postgame show, now you've got this whole circus that no one knows what the hell you're doing, but it's working. It's almost like you're watching The Office and you call Michael Scott in and say, why is your branch the most successful branch? Nobody knows, but you're having fun doing it. But right now it just looks like you have no fucking clue what's going on. So I can see the method behind the madness, but it just hasn't worked.
There's a disconnect with the lack of results. That's what it is.
There's a disconnect with the end results. And at the end of the day, at the NHL level, what worked overseas or what works in the AHL might not work in the NHL. And unless you can prove it there, you don't have the benefit of the doubt with everybody. And that's what I truthfully, honestly, that's what I see in Jeremy Colleton. Ron, you're right. That's the most credit I'll ever give him. That's the last shit I'm ever going to say on here. Go prove it. I might be Jeremy Colleton's biggest fan in 4 or 5 years. Who the fuck knows? Go win. That's all I care about.
Results matter. That, so, yeah. Guys, we're about out of time here. So hit me with some final thoughts here. Obviously, we got our first win under the belt. So that is just Marc-Andre Fleury said, I think that's grill off the back for me. That's kind of the biggest thing there. You gotta win one before you can get to. I think it's gonna be a tough test coming up here, but I do believe, like you had said, Ron, I think that game up at Winnipeg on Friday night, I do think that is a place where they can build further, and obviously you can sandwich that even if you don't win with a very solid effort rebounding against the Carolina Hurricanes, and you had the benefit playing against them recently, so scouting reports are still fresh. All that. That's kind of my last sort of parting thoughts here. I'll be there too. So cheering the boys on. So look for some content from @4featherspod on Twitter and Instagram. I'll be posting from there from Wednesday and Sunday night's games. So guys, I'll hand it over to you and we'll get this episode closed down.
I'll keep it really quick and simple. Something we didn't talk about yet tonight. Really enjoyed Chris Foster's on the play-by-play tonight. Obviously, we all know that this is Pat Foley's last season behind the microphone for the Blackhawks on TV. So, as a guy that we already know is going to be in the rotation, I think he's actually supposed to do the next 2 games this week, Wednesday and Friday. This is a guy I wouldn't be mad about seeing in the future as kind of the voice of the Blackhawks. I've really enjoyed him so far, and I just wanted to give credit where credit was due. I think he called a great game tonight, especially in his first one at the United Center. He got a nice game from Patrick Kane as well. So that's my final thought. Great job tonight, Chris Foster's.
I said I wasn't going to say anything else, but I'll say this: it's fun to talk about winning. That's it. It's fun to talk about winning. I hope we get to do more of that this year, boys. Jonnie, back to you.
Yeah, it is very fun to talk about wins. So that'll wrap it up for season 3, episode 5 of the Four Feathers podcast. 10th time's the charm is what this one was called, because it took 10 games before the Blackhawks finally record a win. Yikes. But hey, it's under our belt. So hope you enjoyed some victory beers and Blackhawks talk with us tonight. Make sure you go and follow us on social media at Four Feathers Pod, at OnTap Sportsnet. Visit ontapsportsnet.com for all Chicago sports, literature, and podcasting needs. And what you need to do is go subscribe to OnTap Sportsnet on YouTube. That is where you can interact with us when we run these shows live. From there, the OnTap Facebook page, and from Four Feathers Pod on Twitter. You can only comment from Facebook or YouTube, though, so go subscribe on YouTube. That's it, boys. Like I said, tough test coming up ahead for the Blackhawks, but first one's under the belt. So that being said, charging forward, let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks.